Hello, friends. We're back. It's September, it's football season, and Orange Weekly has returned to the interweb airwaves. Glad to have you back, everybody. And my name is Brent Axe from syracuse.com. If you're just hopping on board here, we're live on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. We're also live on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube. And right here at the beginning, let me just remind you that this show is live on Thursdays. Now, we're live right now about 1:40 Eastern Standard Time. But typically during the season, we are going to do this show at about noonish. Okay, so kind of book Thursdays about noonish for Orange Weekly. And what we do on Orange Weekly is we hop on live here and we talk, in this case, football. But as we go into the seasons, football, basketball, and all matters of Syracuse Orange sports, but football certainly at the top of our list. We'd like to thank our friends from Krause Health for hopping on board once again, and we're excited for another season here. We're excited to bring you coverage of another Syracuse football season. Myself, our new football beat reporter, Emily Leiker. If you haven't seen Emily's work, please check it out on syracuse.com. Follow her on Twitter. Our great Syracuse football preview that came out in the Post-Standard on Sunday, one way or the other. And certainly you'll be reading Emily and hearing from Emily on this show as the season goes along as well. So we're looking forward to another season of coverage. And for those of you that also watch the post-game show, let me just kind of, break up the cobwebs here and remind you that there will be a Syracuse football post-game show on these same channels live after every game. So shortly after each Syracuse football game ends, I will be right here with you. And the beauty of this show is that not only can you watch the show, you can interact with the show. I love it. I pop on and I see my guy Mike from El Paso. There he is. He was ready. Mike was ready. He knew it was in the air. He knew football was back and ready to do the thing. So you are absolutely more than welcome to participate in the show. Your questions, your comments, keep the conversation going in the comments as we go here. And I'll highlight some as we go through the conversation here on both shows. So Orange Weekly, Thursdays. Today we're on a little later, but typically about noon we'll pop on live here. And you can also watch the replay on YouTube. We'll put a post up on syracuse.com and social media. Certainly a replay available to you on a podcast as well if you miss it live. But we'll be here live Thursdays at noon and after every Syracuse football game. Okay, now that we got that established, what do you say we just kind of jump in here and get ready? And what I'm excited about, and I wonder how you guys are feeling about this, is this is a game. This is a real game, right? No offense to Ohio or Colgate, our friends at Colgate. No offense to Central Connecticut State or Akron or some of these teams that essentially serve as that preseason game that you don't get in college football. It's hard to get excited for those games. You're excited that football is back. You're excited that college football has returned. But, man, to have an ACC opponent, prime time, ACC network, 8 o'clock kickoff to start the season, it's a pretty rare thing for that to be the case. And I'm excited that that's the case. I love that there's juice in this first game. I wrote a column earlier this week on syracuse.com. I hope you can check it out. I think you could put this square in the argument as the most important season opener. You could say home opener, season opener, but the most important season opener for Syracuse football since the newly named JMA Wireless Dome opened in 1980. I think it's that important. Now, to be fair and to be honest, there hasn't been a lot of big opening games through the years. As I mentioned, it's typically, a team that by all accounts, Syracuse can handle, right? But to come out of the chute with, a coach that, look, however you want to put it, folks, there's pressure on Dino Babers to win this year. He's entering year 7. He's had one winning season. You can call it the hot seat. And Blake, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in once again, my friend. So if you're Syracuse, you got to come out with not only a good start in this game, but 5 of your first 6 games are at home. That's huge. Now, the trick is, as many of you know, and I've been writing about this on syracuse.com, and certainly by now, most Syracuse football fans are well aware of how tough this schedule is. This is as tough a schedule as I have seen. It harkens back to the days of Paul Pasqualoni used to say this a lot. The hottest fighter is, it makes the strongest steel, He was right then. He's right now. This is a top 10 schedule by many preseason estimations here. Phil Steele, the college football preview guru who puts out that terrific college football preview magazine, has ranked the 12th in the country. You guys know how tough the schedule is, right? But 5 of the top 6 are at home. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. I am kind of proud of my Coach P impression. And anytime I can break it out, always happy to do so. Coach P still coaching, by the way, defensive line coach for the Carolina Panthers. Saw him the other night when the Panthers were playing the Bills in a preseason game. Anyway, the hottest flyer will make the strongest deal if Syracuse can navigate its way through this schedule and get to a bowl game. And as we all remember from last year, they're one play, one game, however you want to frame it, away from a bowl. They went 5-7. They played that stretch of 4 straight games decided by 3 points. I think it was like 5 straight, if I'm not mistaken, of games decided by a touchdown or less, something crazy like that. And this is where decision-making comes in. This is where, that one loss that tags you in game 2, 3, or 4 can come back to haunt you at the end of the road. So to have a team like Louisville, an ACC opponent right out of the chute, is big. And here's the thing, guys, as you know, typically Syracuse plays Louisville late in the season, right? It's game 8, it's game 9, it's game 10. The team's banged up. Half the team's either on the injured list or playing with a lot of owies, as Dino Babers likes to put it. At least this time, both teams are as fresh as can be, as healthy as can be. Syracuse didn't suffer any major injuries in camp that we know of. They can be secretive about that stuff. The biggest injury that came out of camp was Jihad Carter, who had to leave the field one day in an ambulance, but he was back in practice a few days later. Thankfully, he was okay. So as far as we know, there's not a ton of injuries out there. We'll find out as we go. Certainly, that's football. That's the war of attrition that football is. But I love that they're playing this game early and both teams are healthy. So I think you take that factor out of it. Now, you also have to be careful what you wish for in a way, because remember, Syracuse played Louisville in 2016, second game of the year. And Lamar Jackson did things that they made statues out of. Okay, so be careful what you wish for in a way. And that leads us to Louisville. Malik Cunningham is back a quarterback for Louisville. Is he on a Lamar Jackson type level? Not yet, but he is as dynamic as it gets in the ACC, and really one of the more underrated, in my opinion, dual threats in the country. People that watch college football know, but he just doesn't quite get the buzz some other quarterbacks get. I'm as curious as anybody to see what steps he takes as a quarterback, how Syracuse will defend him in this game. As you go back to the Louisville game last year, guys, and frankly, Louisville has owned Syracuse since both teams crossed paths into the ACC. Syracuse has only beaten them once since that's happened. Go back to the Big East days when they were playing back and forth. There's been some great games between these two. Syracuse, remember, beat Louisville in 2007 with Andrew Robinson at quarterback, and they were literally the biggest underdog in football history. So this has gone both ways. But recently, Louisville has owned this series. And if you want to tighten that window even more, the last 2 games have been decided by a score of 71-3. So Syracuse, I think, is really amped up to play this game. They're hungry to beat Louisville. These seniors, guys like Chris Elmore and these veteran players that have been around for a while, they want to beat this team. They want to get out of here with a win against Louisville. There's a couple holdouts from the 2018 team, the last Syracuse team that beat Louisville. But I just love the matchup. We were talking about Malik Cunningham, and Malik Cunningham's going to do Malik Cunningham things, friends. He had 4 touchdowns and led 2 other scoring drives by halftime last year. Okay, so that's what Louisville does. They jump on people. If Syracuse can weather that storm and make this a game in the second half, when you have a guy like Sean Tucker, when you have a running quarterback in Garrett Schrader, and there's some questions about Schrader I want to get to here shortly, but if Syracuse can get to that second half, everybody makes adjustments, have that defense just remain within striking distance, this is going to be a football game. So that's a huge key against Louisville. Syracuse has got to weather the storm in the first half, but I think they've got some things to throw Louisville's way, because as you guys know, Syracuse has new offensive coordinator Robert Anae. He's got Jason back to his side, the quarterback coach, but also a terrific offensive mind. These guys led a top 5 offense in the country last year at Virginia. The trick there was they had Brennan Armstrong. Now, as it was pointed out to me by the great Wes Durham of the ACC Network, I had a chat with him on my radio show a couple weeks back. Yeah, Robert and I had Brennan Armstrong, but what he did not have at Virginia is a player like Sean Tucker. So if Schrader can step into a role where he can consistently throw the football, I don't have any dreams of Garrett Schrader going out there and looking like a Devin Leary or one of these, uh, pocket type quarterbacks in the ACC. And the ACC is loaded at quarterback, and Syracuse is going to see a lot of them on its schedule this year. Remember, Schrader and Tucker combined for, I think it was around 26 rushing touchdowns last year. So you want Schrader to do that when it's appropriate. He's got to throw the football, right? So I feel like if Syracuse can get this into the second half, rely on those two, but throw the wrinkles out there that Robert and I is going to bring to this offense. I think if I'm Louisville, I'm a little nervous about what this guy's going to bring. Now, you can watch film of Virginia and you can try and decipher some things there. It's not like it's a trade secret here, but I think Syracuse has at least, and I hope, and they should use a tactical advantage there. Throw the ball to the tight end. Aronde Gadsden was listed at tight end this week. Don't tease me with a good time. You guys know, longtime viewers of this show and radio listeners of mine know, man, throw the ball to the tight end. I don't know why this offense just has refused to do that, whether it's Babers, Sterling, Gilbert, whoever's been in charge of the offense. It drives me nuts that they don't throw to the tight end. Maybe this is the year. And Gadsden is not a tight end in traditional means. He's a flex guy. You can go to receiver, you can go to tight end. He's a football player. They're great. Use him that way. We've heard during camp, Dan Villari comes in, the Michigan transfer at quarterback. He's taking reps at receiver now, because that's another really interesting development in camp. Was Carlos Del Rio Wilson, quarterback, transfers in from Florida in May. Okay, didn't even go through spring ball, comes into fall camp, wins the backup quarterback job. And guys, I cannot repeat this enough. That is critical, because the backup quarterback plays at Syracuse. You know, the last Syracuse quarterback that went wire to wire in a season was Ryan Nassib in 2012. Since then, every season, the backup has had to play significant minutes, either by injury or by just ineffective play. And all you got to do is look back to last year. Garrett Schrader takes over for Tommy DeVito, who's now at Illinois and is the starting quarterback there. It had a heck of an opening game against Wyoming last weekend, but clearly a change had to be made. It was made, and now here we are. We'll see what Schrader does, that it is fully his job, and this offense has been tailored to him. By the way, this is the fourth offensive coordinator that Schrader's had in 4 years. So hopefully this is the one that pans out for him. And one of those, by the way, was when he was playing wide receiver at Mississippi State. So that's a factor in this game. Defensively, Louisville had, like Syracuse, has great linebackers. Yasir Abdullah is one of the best linebackers in the ACC. I think he's right there in that conversation with Mikel Jones. A great story that Emily wrote this week, by the way. I'm sure most of you guys and gals saw it, but if you didn't, please check it out. Malik Cunningham apparently heard some things at ACC Media Day from Mikel Jones and wasn't too fond of that, so he taped it up in his locker. And to that I say, go ahead. As good as Malik Cunningham is, Mikel Jones is the best linebacker in the ACC, in my opinion. So they're just two NFL talents that are going to make plays in this game. So whatever you need to motivate you, if that gets your juices flowing, whatever, dude. Mikel Jones is pretty good too. So we'll see how that plays out, right? But Syracuse is so strong at linebacker. They have probably the best cornerback duo in the ACC. NC State's cornerbacks are really good too. So it's really between those two teams. But give me Deuce Chestnut and Garrett Williams, and I'm pretty happy about that. The defensive line, yeah, guys, I'm as curious as anybody. We've heard a couple of names like Caleb Ochukwu is back, but man, there's a lot of new faces out there. So how they pass rush Malik Cunningham, what they decide to do in this game, because there's just certain things you have to accept he's going to do. It's just, what do you really hone in on? Do you cut off his passing lanes and take risks with him, running and taking off and running and exposing himself to tacklers? Or do you just get after him and see what happens? I would probably go with the first option as best as you can. Confusion, make him make decisions. You can run with the football. It's what you do with the football once you run with it. But he's going to make plays. You just have to kind of accept that and do the best you can when it counts. Prevent the big plays. Don't let him run wild in the red zone. And you got to answer with your offense, right? And last year, now I think part of this was certainly Syracuse was down, I think 35-3 at halftime, and you're not running the football in the second half. But that was one of the few games last season where Sean Tucker was held under 100 yards. Now he had 95. It's not like, he went out there and was, taking a walk through the park. But Louisville has that going for them. And Louisville just has this sense of confidence, as they should. They've owned this series. There's been some radio hosts and some people in Louisville that are basically like aghast that Syracuse has been picked by some people, yours truly included. I took Syracuse 34-30. I think it's going to be that kind of game, and I feel like they can take advantage of some of those things we mentioned and maybe a few that we haven't and just win a shootout type of football game. I hope it's an entertaining game and Syracuse makes it a game because typically they don't against Louisville, but we went over the reasons why. Either you have a all-world talent type quarterback in Lamar Jackson, and again, Malik Cunningham is as good as it gets, but I think we know 2016 Lamar Jackson show, we may never see anything like that again. That was incredible what he did in that game. That was Dino's second game as head coach too. So, I'm looking forward to a lot of aspects of this game. So we brought up the schedule though. This is as tough a schedule as I have ever seen Syracuse play, certainly in the Dome era, right? You get Louisville to start. You go to UConn next week, who looked a little tougher against Utah State than I expected. So shout out to Jim Mora and UConn for coming in there and getting those guys to play. But UConn's already lost its starting quarterback, and you got to win that game. UConn's terrible. Come back the next week, you get Purdue, noon kickoff at the Dome, and that is a good Big Ten team. Most people have them picked somewhere between 3 and 5 in the Big Ten West. They won 9 games last year. They've got a great coach in Jeff Brom and a great quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, who was a top 20 passer in the country last year. Short week, Virginia, Friday night. And we all know about that one, guys. Syracuse has a huge tactical advantage against Virginia, having Robert Anae and Jason Beck on their staff. Brennan Armstrong is still the quarterback there. They're a whole new staff. Tony Elliott comes in from Clemson, takes over, and we'll see where their adjustments are by the time game 4 comes around here. But Syracuse has got to take advantage of that. You get Wagner after that, which is, come on, you got to take advantage of a bad team like that, right? And then you go into your bye week. After the bye week, wow. What a gauntlet for Syracuse. There are 4 preseason ranked teams in a row for the Orange in that case, and I think they're all still going to be ranked when Syracuse plays them. So it starts with NC State. NC State brings back Devin Leary. NC State's been kind of the chic pick in preseason to win the ACC this year. They've got a lot of starters back. We mentioned that great secondary that they have. So it starts there. They're preseason 13. Then you host Notre Dame at the Carrier Dome. And I'm glad that Notre Dame is coming here, not MetLife Stadium, Yankee Stadium, here, there, everywhere, in the Dome. They're a top 5 team. I skipped over one. What am I doing here? NC State into Clemson, pardon me. Clemson is Clemson. Now, Syracuse only lost by 3 to Clemson last year, but they have one of the best defenses in the country. Will they solve their quarterback situation is the big thing, but that's going to be a tough game, particularly at Clemson. Notre Dame after that, as we brought up. Then you're at Pitt. Now, Pitt lost Kenny Pickett, but they have a terrific quarterback that they brought in as a transfer in Kadon Slovis, who played at USC and has experience, and Pitt has experienced a lot of guys back and kind of has that confidence now as a team that can compete in the ACC. Frankly, I think that's a level that Syracuse fans want to see the Orange at what Pittsburgh can do. Then you finish. Now, that starts a stretch, by the way, where 3 of your last 4 games are on the road. At Pitt, home to Florida State, at Wake Forest, at BC. Now, Sam Hartman is currently out for Wake Forest. He certainly could be back by then. And then BC gets Phil Dracovic back at quarterback this year. So you can see why you got to, in that first 5-game stretch, Louisville, UConn, Purdue, Virginia, Wagner, get 4 wins there. You got 2 in the bank against UConn and Wagner. Give me 2 other wins, including, that's why I think this one against Louisville on Saturday is important. And then just hold on for dear life on the back end. If I can get 5 wins going into that stretch, and I only got to win 1 in a stretch of NC State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, Florida State, Wake, and then Boston College, you're in a bowl game, right? And I think everybody agrees that if Dino gets a bowl game, that moves everything forward another year, right? Maybe some people still want to see a change made. Maybe you've seen enough. I certainly understand that and respect that, but you don't fire a coach if he goes to a bowl game. they'll have to make a decision about another extension and what the long-term future is going to be after that. But certainly a bowl game rubber stamps at the very least another season, right? As Rob talks about Louisville and what they've done here, Scott Satterfield. Look, there's a guy who some Louisville fans think is on the hot seat as well. Louisville stumbled to the finish last year. They got trucked by Kentucky. They lost their bowl game, but Louisville has really taken advantage of recruiting, name, image, and likeness. The fans see some positive things happening there. So we'll see how that plays out. Satterfield and Babers, Jeff Conklin, down at Georgia Tech. He's on the hot seat this year. There's a few coaches that have to prove themselves in whatever year they're in. Dino's in year 7. Those guys have been at their respective jobs shorter than Babers. But there's a lot of coaches in the ECC that really have to prove themselves this year. And it all starts Saturday night when the Orange takes on Louisville. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff at the JM8 Wireless Dome. Still have not screwed that up. I'll refer to Carrier Dome in past tense, right? When this game took place at the then Carrier Dome. But I've been doing pretty good with that. I don't know why. It just kind of stuck with me. I haven't fallen into old habits there. So knock on wood. Shouldn't jinx myself on that one. But that's the scene. Crowd should be somewhere in the upper 30s for an opening game, which is pretty good in prime time. Labor Day weekend, the state fair is going on here in Syracuse. So that's going to kind of dent the attendance a bit. But I think it's going to be a great crowd. The students have been fantastic crowd-wise. So I think it's going to be a good atmosphere, and hopefully these two teams give them a show to put on. Before we go, though, I want to take a few more of your questions here. Glenn says, just got in here. What are your thoughts on Schrader? Listen, I'm wondering what you can do in one off season, Glenn, because I didn't see it last year. I didn't see a consistent thrower, and I feel like if this offense is truly going to be what it can, you need someone who can consistently throw the football. I think Schrader's a great talent. I like his leadership. I'll tell you what, just being around him in the preseason and training camp, media opportunities and things of that nature, he's a lot more confident. He knows it's his team. He loves this offense. But what can you do in one off season? And Jason Beck is a terrific quarterback coach, but there's a lot that's got to happen right away. So what do you prioritize that benefits him as a passer? And utilizing Tucker, of course, but that group of wide receivers, Glenn, I don't know. I mean, Courtney Jackson was the leading receiver last year. There's a lot of talent there. They brought in C.J. Hayes from Michigan State, Damian Alford. We mentioned Gadsden's a tight end. I like Devon Cooper a lot. I think he's going to have a breakout year. But there is not like a standout in there. Maybe you don't need that in this type of offense, but whoever Garrett connects with is going to be huge. Remember at the beginning of last year, you had a real talent in Taj Harris. By the end of the year, he's not even on the team, and he had his own issues as the reason for that. So what can you distill down and come out of the chute starting Saturday night, but I mean even early in the season, and put Garrett Schrader in a position of success? Because this is a guy who only threw for over 200 yards twice last season. He's gritty. He's tough. He'll make a throw. Remember that Virginia Tech throw and a couple other big ones in some of those close games. But I need to see consistency over 4 quarters. Michael, my prediction, Syracuse 34, Louisville 30. I think we're going to see Syracuse hold its own in the first half, put out some of those wrinkles we're talking about here, take advantage of making Louisville wonder just exactly what Robert and I is going to do, utilize Gadsden, utilize Villari, just throw everything at them and the kitchen sink right out of the chute. You got a tough ACC game. Game 1, don't hold anything back. Go at them. I think the defense has to pick itself up in terms of turnovers. They only had 4 turnovers last year total, which is kind of atypical for that defense. Tony White's defenses are pretty aggressive, and we're almost, we're top 15 in the country in takeaways a couple of years prior to that. But I think that great secondary, those experienced linebackers do enough. I mean, Malik Cunningham's going to make plays. But they're in a situation wide receiver-wise as well. A lot of guys left in the portal. They brought in a bunch of new guys that they're adjusting to that offense. So also, I think we could see kind of a mess of a football game in a good way, just, some big plays because teams are trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And you look up at the end of the day and Syracuse, scores late or holds on for a victory. At the very least, I do think that they're going to cover the 4.5 if you're into that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Rob wants to know, what are your thoughts on the ACC has handled and needs to handle conference realignment this summer and going forward? The grant of rights runs through 2037. Rob, I feel like the ACC has a cushion there because that grant of rights deal is very hard to get out of. Texas and Oklahoma have not tried to get out of theirs to go to the SEC early. USC and UCLA, same thing. They're going to kind of ride it out till 2024, go to the Big Ten. But the ACC can't just sit around and be like, yeah, we got the grant of rights. We're good. No, I think the ACC has got to be as aggressive as they can, target some schools that make sense to come in, be ready to pounce. I was not impressed with what Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, said at ACC Media Day about all this. He was basically whining about it. Remember the comments he had over the summer about, exclusive neighborhoods? I actually talked to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey about that. You can read my column on that on syracuse.com. I had a great conversation with Greg Sankey, who's Central New York guy, born in Auburn, went to school here, and who knew? One of the most powerful people in college sports, has deep, deep Central New York roots, still has a house on Skinny Atlas Lake, as a matter of fact. So I'm not impressed, to be honest with you. The ACC is good. They're not in as much of a situation where, the ship is sinking kind of way because of that grant of rights deal. But don't just sit on that, right? They've got to figure out a way to stay in the game. I think the Power 5 becomes the Power 3 eventually. I think the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are going to merge, and the ACC, that super conference, and actually it's a Power 4, right? Am I doing my math right? You got the Big 10, you got the SEC, ACC, and then that fourth super conference. Maybe the ACC gets into that super conference as well, but one way or the other, the Power 5 is going to evaporate, and it's going to be the Power 3, maybe the Power 2, and everybody else. Where Syracuse fits in that conversation too, you got to be good at football. The conversation we're having right now about this football team, what Syracuse builds up, what the future holds, you have got to be an attractive football property to be desired by one of these super conferences. And Syracuse, frankly, has not been in the last 20 years. So I'm as curious as anybody. The grant of rights deal keeps us secure for a while, but the next thing you're going to know, we're going to wake up and 4 other teams are going to leave this conference, and the Power grant of rights deal, is going to be over. So Rob, my hope is Jim Phillips wakes up, he gets aggressive, and he puts the ACC in a position of strength and not a position of the Big Ten's going to come in and swipe Clemson and swipe Florida State and swipe North Carolina. They want Virginia and things of that nature. So, boy, this conference realignment stuff, it feels like that hamster wheel never stops spinning, right? And it's been gives me a lot to talk about, a lot to write about here, certainly. But Syracuse, I feel like, is got to be feeling pretty nervous about this whole thing and staying in the big boys club in college football. That's for sure. All right. What do you say we end right there for this edition of Orange Weekly? But just a reminder, everybody. So we will be here live on Thursdays. We're a little later than usual today, but typically we'll be popping in about noonish. Okay. So we're live on all the channels you're watching now: Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube. If you missed the show, don't worry. We'll have a replay up for you. The YouTube clip, we'll put it on social media. You can rewatch the replay on our Facebook page. Plenty of places to watch the replay if you missed the show live. And a reminder that thanks to our friends at Krause Health, we will be live after every Syracuse football game on these same channels that you're watching right now. And the replay will be available for that as well. Do what you did today. Hop in the comments, join us, and here we go again, friends. Football is back. It should be a very interesting season, and it all starts with a juicy game Saturday night at the Dome as the Orange take on Louisville. But thanks for hanging with us today on Orange Weekly. My name's Brent Axe. We'll talk to you again next time, guys.